At any rate, I was talking about living in this era and how when we live from revelation, which is constant access to heaven, it changes the way we do everything. And so when we realize how simple it is, like Chris Carter's the one that made that really simple for me. Um, just being able to use my imagination, which for some of us, it's like if you've been told your imagination is wrong or that you got into dark things or whatever, the imagination is really a challenge. The other part of the challenge for imagination is when you've had a lot of trauma. Trauma does stuff to our creativity in a way that just kind of kills imagination, right? And we don't know how to imagine a promised future. We don't know how to imagine something really grand happening to us. We don't know how to imagine certain things. So trauma is a killer. And so Jesus, we're just asking you to resurrect our imagination. So what happens when you're doing that is if you look in your mind's eye is that screen, okay? And if I in my mind's eye, I begin to picture myself walking into the door of the library in heaven, and I continue to let my imagination go, and I get into that library, and I get into the section that has my book of life, then I see that book of life, right? I'm just using this encounter as an example. I'm in there with Jesus because I imagined and I put Jesus in the picture. Okay. So if you don't see him initially in the picture, just put him in it. Bring the picture you have of Jesus, put him in the picture. It sounds contrived, for people that aren't used to it. It's like it feels all this kind of way. But here's the deal: you were made to see, and you are one with heaven. Paul didn't know which domain he was in. He was like, it's a blurred reality for me. But in our very Western Christianity, in our very sterile and very, fundamental Christianity, we're not used to the things of the spirit, number one. And then if we are used to the things of the spirit, we've got a limited palette on what we consider to be the things of the spirit. I can speak in tongues, we can get people healed. We can, what else goes with that? For a lot of people, that's about as far as it goes, right? But when you but what we don't always realize is that we have access to heaven via our imagination. I quoted Michael Van Vlymen earlier about, he said the imagination is the bridge to supernatural. It is. So here's what happens when you engage your imagination, then things begin to happen in the imagination. I'm going to go back to that original encounter and I'm going to walk through, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but it just seems fun anyway. So I had tried to do this ascension with my wife, in the group, the Hammerites, for I'm the guy that when we first of all, when you do a meeting at 7 and there's a pause, and if I'm remotely sitting and I'm remotely reclined, I'm out. So every time they would be doing an ascension and she would be leading them, I'd pass out. And so then at the end of the thing, everybody's sharing, "Oh, this is what happened when I was in heaven. This is the pa, 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 pa." And I'd be like, sometimes I would try to do the activation real quick while everybody was talking and just have Jesus do something that I could have something to report on, right? And so, it's ADD. It's like, okay, we gotta move, right? So one day I just said to my wife, I said, "Here's the deal," because it was one of the most profound encounters. It still is having impact on me today. Okay. So I said, I need the 4-minute trip. I need not a long pre-trip. I don't need in my, because part of when you're getting people to use your imagination is you try to prime the pump a little bit. Like, for example, if I said, picture a door in front of you, in your mind's eye, you could picture a door. And if I said, what color is it? Suddenly I see the door that I'm looking at, it's gold. Okay. And then if I'm looking at that door and it's gold, well, what kind of knob does it have on it? And then I say, oh, well, the door that I see in my mind's eye right now has a big crystal like knob on it. It's almost like glass. I say, okay, now open the door. Okay, so in my mind's eye, I go and I open that door, and you're doing the same thing. All right, what's on the other side of the door? All right, right now, as I'm imagining that and I'm seeing myself open that door, I see a long, long highway. That'd be nice. A long hallway, but it's extremely brightly lit. So I don't, so initially I don't know whether I should walk into it, but I can see that there are doors along the way, and I can see that there are people that kind of move in and out of that bright light in the hallway. Okay, what I just did was I read you the screen of my mind's eye. That's all it is. So we could say that that's just me. That's fine. We could say that that's God. Now, if we were to carry that out, let me go back to my original encounter. I'm just going to play this out a little bit. So I walked into what I imagined. I saw the library of heaven and I walked in with Jesus. And we got to the place where the book of life were. And mine was about mid shelf. And it had all it said was Scott and it was glowing. I mean, it was like, I'm going to use this word, don't get freaked out. It looked magical in the sense that it was like, glowing and glistening and all kind of light coming off of it. And I'm the guy that when I'm in an encounter like that and I have Jesus present with me, I work out all my issues. So I'm like, well, what do I do? Well, you need to open the book. And I'm like, well, what's in the book? Am I going to like what's in the book? Is there, if you've had any trauma, you understand exactly what I'm talking about because you're looking at this as the big reveal. Okay. There's going to be a big reveal in here. And I don't know if the big reveal is consistent with my years of disappointment, my attempts at hopefulness, my sense of my destiny or a change in my destiny, like, I have no idea. He said, "You're just gonna have to open the book." So I did. I opened the book, and what I see are no letters. It's paths that are moving and roads and intertwined, just moving in and out of each other. And it's dynamic. Like, the whole thing is moving. It's like there's a whole city in there with all these roads. And so as I see these paths, I look at Jesus and I'm like, what do I do? He said, just get on the path, and the dream will chase you down. The dream will find you. Very simple. All right. Worst case scenario, I totally imagined it. I imagined that there's something of my destiny, which agrees with the Bible in Psalm 139 that God wants to open up for me. Do you see where the supernatural comes into the picture? It became supernatural when I had Jesus there present with me as the book was open. And then when I saw what was in it. So, the bridge that we have to cross is you know, you use your mind's eye all the time. How many people, when you're praying for somebody, begin to picture something, right? If you do anything with the prophetic, most of the time when I prophesy, the first thing I do is a lot of times is I just have a flash of a picture. An example, I saw a kid across the way in the church and he was in a wedding tuxedo. And I thought, Lord, we're not supposed to prophesy about those things weddings, babies, spouses, all that. But I knew that's what the Lord was doing. So I went over to him. I knew him. And I said, I don't know if you're in a relationship at all, but within 6 months, you're going to be married. It's going to be a whirlwind season. It's going to be like so much happens. You're going to wonder at times what's going on. Is God in all this? Because it's just going to be like a heavenly storm this next 6 months, but it's the best storm ever. And you're going to be married at the end of that time. And he just looked at me and he said, I am dating somebody. And I've been at wondering about this whole thing of engagement with her, and wondering if she's the one. And, but we've been dating for a little while. 6 months later, they were married. It started with the picture. Everything with heaven has a dynamic that you have to put a demand on heaven in order to get something from heaven. If there's no demand, you don't get anything from heaven. Does that make sense? So it's like spiritual muscles. If you never use them, then you don't get to engage with what you're actually able to do. But like everything, the more you practice, Michael Van Lyman said, I don't know why I'm talking about seeing in the spirit on this one, but it's fun to me. Michael Van Lyman said that most of the things that he learned in the very beginning were things the Lord was teaching him. Okay. And it was like an object lesson. So they were pretty spectacular things, like, I mean, pretty crazy things. The craziest one was when he saw a crystal glass in the spirit, and the Lord said to go ahead and grab it. And he grabbed it, and it became a real glass. It became a crystal glass. If that doesn't blow you away, blew me away. But what the Lord was teaching him in that was this, that the unseen, and I've been saying this phrase ever since I read that in his book and talked to him, interviewed him for Angel Agents. I've been saying this phrase. The unseen real is more real than what you're looking at. And that's what he wanted him to know, that when you see things in the spirit that are actually going on and you apprehend it and you reach out and you grab it, it becomes tangible, it becomes a manifestation. And so many of us are in this place where we know something is true in the spirit. We know that we've seen something that has to do with our destiny. We know that there are things that God has spoken boonk, sideways to us. I just call it sideways, like when he just speaks something really, really clear in that still small voice. And we know that. And so where we are is in between the knowing and the manifestation. If you have the first part, just ask my wife this, she can tell you all about it. If you have the first part, there's a difference in knowing and standing. Standing in faith is I'm standing on this verse. This is a promise. This is a promise. But all the while you're standing, there is a form of anxiety going on inside of you because you're trying to do something that is actually what the Bible says. What does the Bible say? Basically, you're going to call things into existence, speak things into existence as though, things that were not as though they are. You're also going to declare a matter, declare something in faith, and that's what declarations are all about, right? What are we doing when we do that? We're opening something. Everything in the kingdom is voice activated. So when I activate something in the spirit with my voice, it actually does something. So declaring something is true, waiting on something, doing the Abraham thing where it's like, look, I haven't seen it, but I know you said it, so I'm going to keep going, right? Though that is faith. And that's an aspect of faith. It's a part of my faith where I know something is true. I'm believing something I haven't seen yet. And believe it or not, that's probably in many ways one of the highest forms of faith right there. I'm going to count something as real that I know I haven't seen yet, but I know that God has spoken. I think that in itself plays music to God's heart. Okay, like that's just like fresh music and like incense to him. There's another kind of knowing, and that's the knowing where you have an encounter with God and he reveals something to you that is real about your destiny, about something that's going to happen or something he's doing. And so I'll give a simple example. If I if the Lord said to me, I've been praying about a certain kind of a job, right? I've been talking about you, Michael. I just talked about the crystal glass. I couldn't help myself. I just couldn't help myself. It was like, there it is. Grab it. If I know that, let's say I know that God has promised me a job. Okay, in faith, I'm like, I am out there, I am holding on. That's a declaration. Okay. What happens if when I let's say I'm downtown, I get outside, I walk by a certain building, and the Holy Spirit just shows up. You ever had that happen? And boom, all of a sudden I'm in a heavenly mode, and I feel something inside of me shifting. God doing the thing that I cannot. My faith was declaring and holding, but I was still surviving, if that makes sense. I'm still in a place where where I'm laboring to enter into this rest, if you will, of something that I know that God has spoken. But when Holy Spirit shows up and land, like you feel his presence and he does something where you enter into this dimension with him, and he says that building is going to be your job is in that building. That takes me out of declaring that I'm going to have a job, and the Holy Spirit just told me, encountered me. This is what the whole thing of accessing heaven is all about. I have to access heaven. That's what we're doing in this arena, in this season, in this landscape, in this era that we are in. We're in a totally different era. So it's like, so that's how we actually live. Holy Spirit said that building is your job. Or better yet, if you wanted to say something to me, "Oh, you're gonna own that building." Better, I like that better. When you have that encounter, you go from declaring and trying to, put your faith out there in your declaration to a knowing. Now, I know that my job is in that building, and now I'm just waiting for it to manifest. There's nothing that can shake it. It's like you had a transfiguration moment. You were with Jesus, you had an encounter with him that was so significant that he shifted something on the inside of you, and suddenly you realize it's gonna happen. It's going to happen. When you're in that place, I haven't been in that place yet. I'm going there. Everything changes. Now it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. It's going to happen. It's the knowing. Some people would call that maybe the gift of faith, but what I'm talking about is actually beyond that. Um, I like this part, this quote by Fiorella right here. It says, I'm going to hold your hands when I say this. You are not complicated. You're just too multifaceted for a system that prefers predictability. We're being expanded right now. We are being expanded. And the way I've thought of this is you're not just getting a new circuit board, where you get a few new things added to your circuit board, you're getting a whole new circuit board. What does that mean? Think of your circuit board as your capacity to engage with heaven. Okay. My capacity to engage in the things of the spirit. And so if God expands what I already have, then I'm working with what I know and I get to go into this one new area or there's something here. This landscape is different. He's not adding to something old. He's creating something new. This landscape is streams in the desert. This landscape is where every one of the past timelines that has everything that you've lost is going to collide with a future timeline rather, and something will happen in the present. So what am I saying when I say that? He's restoring what is lost, not by giving you what you have lost back, but he's doing it by creating something brand new that's never been done before. That is different. So take a past timeline. I lost everything here. A future timeline, which is the timeline of promise, the thing that's about to the thing that my destiny that I'm walking in. And when those two slam together, something happens in the now. So what am I saying? He's taking something of what you've lost and he's futurizing it in the present moment by doing something that's never been done and giving you something that's never you've never had before. So you're not just getting a new addition to your circuit board. I'm giving you a whole new circuit board. I'm replacing what you've been operating from, and I'm giving you a new operating system, something that you've never known. And in this operating system, there are capacities that you've yet to explore. This is why we are living in this place of confusion and disorientation right now, because we're used to living out of the old circuit board. We're used to living out of the things that this thing had. It had limitations, right? So think of it as capacities. This capacity of my old circuit board, I had reached the end of it, but it's the only thing I've known. I've crossed over a threshold into a new era, into a new we got two eras that are overlapping right now. And as I'm crossing over into the new, right? My old circuit board is going boink, 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 boink. I don't know how to function. I don't know how to function. I don't know how to function, right? And so what he's giving you is he's not saying, "Oh, let me add a thing to that." It's not like saying, "I was Holy Spirit filled, I spoke in tongues, I prophesied, and then I'm going to add seeing in the spirit." No. I'm giving you something that's totally new, and it's like you're gonna be like a kid in a candy store as you begin to explore this totally new circuit board that has things on it that you don't know, and this circuit board is in direct conflict in places to the old, because this one runs on the currency of the unfamiliar and the new. This one is streams in the desert. This one is walk by faith, not by sight. This one is streams in the desert, and this one is walk by faith and declare walk by faith, not by sight. Totally different arenas. This one requires engagement with heaven in order to function in the circuit board. If I don't function and engage heaven, I won't even know how to do anything. So when you're in between, I've done some ascension, I've done some functioning in heaven. I've been able to use my imagination as the bridge to supernatural on a level. If you're that person and you come into your new circuit board, then you're just a lost kid in a candy store. If you're still the person who's never engaged heaven in any way, and you're just still, I speak in tongues, I heal the sick, I do the things that are spirit filled, then it's more of a struggle. But regardless, there is a level of disorientation with all of it, because we're not trying to do something that's in addition to something we've done. We're not being expanded, we're being replaced. My circuit board is being completely replaced. So here's what she says, Fiorella. She says, "You're not lost, you're expanding beyond what the old rooms could host or control." She says, "Stop looking for confirmation from an environment that you've already outgrown." Exactly. When you're used to functioning human nature with a certain circuit board and a certain way of functioning, of course, Jesus replacing the circuit board, expanding everything so that we're actually in a whole new world. Okay, we're in a whole new world right now. So I keep hearing that song, "It's a whole new world." Oh, Magic Carpet Ride. Everybody will love that when I say that. No, we're not talking about magic carpet rides, but if Jesus wants to bring me a chariot or a carpet, I'll get on it. But my point is, you're going from something that's known into something that's completely unknown. And the Lord is trying, Jesus is trying to sink us in the middle and trying to get us to cross over into this thing that's totally new, where there's a whole new circuit board, a whole new way of doing what we do. On this side, we're banging at the door. waiting on God to do something, and we're begging him, right? Our little orphan is going nuts. On this side, in this new place, we're ascending, we're getting revelation, we're getting into, we go to heaven, we get the revelation we need, we speak the thing that we get in heaven, and we watch it manifest in real time in front of us. So we're going from beg time, future time to real time. It's the way that you know that your words won't fall is when you just accessed heaven and he gave you the word. And when you speak the word that you just accessed in heaven and you speak that word, then it's got something on it. It's like you're speaking something in the unfamiliar realms of everything. Like the unfamiliar is our friend. The familiar is our box. The unfamiliar is our liberation. Everything he's not doing according to the patterns that we are used to and the boxes that we're used to. Everything he's doing is a stream in the desert, so it's new. Your new circuit board has ushered you into the new. And that's why it's confusing. That's why we're overwhelmed. That's why we're trying to figure some things out, because we've got these two places that we're operating from, this thing that's totally new and this thing that we know, and they're warring inside of us. But Jesus is sinking you. And I'm just declaring that, using the old model, that he's building a bridge from one landscape to the next as you cross this threshold. So as you cross over, he's building a bridge for you so that you can function, so that he can download new things to you, engage you in ways you've never been engaged before. Um, that's Here's another one. Warfare doesn't come out of thin air. This is Fiorella. It seeks expression where your identity and destiny are not yet in sync. Oh Lord, I love her stuff because you have to really think about that. It's so true. The war is, let me read that again. Warfare doesn't come out of thin air. It seeks expression. Let me just say this real quick. If everything is warfare, then it's like we're looking for a devil under every bush. Okay. I'm not that guy. Warfare is usually something that has a reason to be a warfare with me. And, John Wimber said, where there is no poop, there's no flies. And so his whole approach to even healing was, if you heal the person's wound, there's nothing there to attract the flies. Demons work in round they work in places of permission, whether that permission is a mindset, whether that permission is a sin place, whether that permission is anything that's operating outside of my blueprint, or something that was done to me. Trauma is a great permission, right? But it's not something that's usually just like coming at you, from out here sideways 24/7. It comes at you in strategic places. And what she says here is true. I believe this is true. It seeks expression when your identity and destiny are not yet in sync. It's the sucker punch between the realms. Okay. It's the sucker punch when you go from one landscape to another. Okay. When you're crossing, it's a threshold thing. Thresholds are places of war. Most of the time, when we cross major thresholds in our life, those are the places when you look back at your life where things got derailed, things blew up, everything went to hell in a handbasket. Those are thresholds, are places where the enemy knows that there's something that's going to be upgraded, but he doesn't know exactly what it is. But he knows that something of heaven is on you because you're getting ready to cross it. And so they become places of war because we're crossing over into something unfamiliar, something new. And he doesn't know everything about you, but he knows enough to know that whatever you're going to get on the other side isn't going to be something that is good for him. It's going to make him less, more impervious to you. okay, less access to you. So what does he do when you cross it? I've shared our stories so much, at nauseum, but moving up here was supposed to be crossing the threshold. I got disillusioned, went into a pit of depression for 2 months, and it was just essentially that's the shortest version ever. But a lot of that was the enemy wanted to take me out and to convince me that my destiny was gone because nothing was happening the way that I thought it should, and everything was happening the way I thought it shouldn't. And I looked at the things that were familiar, which is everything happening. When the war is familiar, you get triggered when you sniff the hint of war in the air. When the war is what's familiar, when the trauma, the cycles, the etc. When those things are the thing that's familiar, when you sniff the air and there's a hint of it, you're already triggered. You're already there. So all the enemy has to do in that place is give you enough of the same kind of trauma and war that to convince you that everything about you is a lie. All he has to do in those places for many of us is give you enough of what you already know. He inundates you in what you are familiar with to convince you that hope is not real, because hope is the thing that feels unfamiliar to us. Living in the being fully actualized in our destiny is what feels foreign. Most of us, many of us, because it's a season of great convergence, and I talk about this a lot, I know, we are in a place where we are many of us feel like we are frauds, late bloomers. Things are happening later in life. And can I just say to you that your 50s to 60s are going to be really crazy and awesome? Your 60 to 70 are going to be your most productive years ever. And 70 to 80 will top your 50s and 60s. That's what it's gonna look like. That's what redeemed time's gonna look like. That's what it looks like to be in an accelerated landscape. God redeems time by taking everything that would be this much time and squeezing it into this, so that what's in the middle is thicker, richer, creamier, more luscious, more more profound, deeper. How does a woman forget the labor and everything and giving and birthing a baby immediately after she has the baby? How does that happen? Because the joy, the joy, the joy, the joy is much bigger than the pain. That's what the captives were doing when they came back from Zion. Now, I have a different picture of captives. I'm just saying. When Jane and I were at that service where everything changed for her, where she came into knowing much, I had a vision of us, and we were coming out of a cave, like a nest underground cave, like a bunker. And we were practically maimed. We couldn't stand up straight because our limbs weren't working. We were bent over. Our bodies were bruised and cut and everything you can imagine. We looked like we had had everything beaten completely out of us. And we were looking at each other and we were giddy. We were giddy laughing. Now, how do people coming out of whatever, I can say this hell we were coming out of, how did we look so giddy? Why were we like, because we knew that our captivity was over, that the things that's that coming into a knowing. It's one thing to declare it and decree it on this side of the threshold. It's another on this side of the threshold to know that it's happened and know that you've come out, to know that whatever thing the enemy has wrapped us up in his ability and his desire to completely derail us, destroy, to disfigure the image of God within us in every way he can through trauma, etc., etc. Everything that he's thrown at us from day one before I mean, not before we were born, but, well, yeah, for some of us before we were born, while we were in mother's womb. But my point in that is just to say this: when oh, I lost my point. Praise the Lord. Um, anyway, the enemy, when he knows that he has great ground to lose with us, that's when he comes in and fights. It's like this is where he's coming in to do the battle. He's doing it at the thresholds. And it's when you're crossing over into those places that he comes and he wants to take you out and convince you that everything that's ever been spoken about you, everything you've ever dreamed, everything you ever thought was going to be, everything. I used to say to God, I'd be like, you know, what's inside of me is bigger than what I'm doing. And you made the wrong guy. If you wanted me to be Mr. IBM, Mr. Come home, do my clock by 8 to 4, do my gig, have my dinner, watch my TV, go to bed, get up, blah, 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 blah. Oh, maybe get a cabin in the mountains and maybe get my RV so we can go visit the grands and whatever, and never do anything else, then you made the wrong guy. Because you are heading into the biggest and most profound and prolific season of your life. The next 10 years, you will do more in the kingdom and to impact the world than you've done in your entire life. That's what redeemed time looks like. That's what it means when God redeems time. That's why the captives coming back from Zion, my picture of them was they had the crap beat out of them, but they were drunk with awe, shock, and wonder. There's something about this where the ones, okay, it is a first go last and last go first. Okay. It is a thing where many are going metaphorically from obscurity to center stage overnight. What happened with the captives coming from Zion is they went from captivity to freedom overnight and they were beaten all to pieces. And so, what happens when you are suddenly catapulted into this place of great freedom and provision and actualization in the kingdom? Doing the thing that you were made for. Doing, your years being richer and deeper and doing more in 10 years than you've done in 25 or 30 or 40 years. How does that happen? When that happens, everything changes. It's like that's what it means with Amos 9. Look, we are in the biggest reaping era ever, and we're going to do sowing on steroids. And we come in at this thing at 11:59, and everything that has been sown before us is being reaped in this era. And it's like we are in a sowing, we are drowning in a sowing tsunami. Okay. And I don't know why the Lord does this thing where I was talking to a friend of mine and we were comparing our depression notes from the summer. And um, it was like the way we defined it at the end, the redeemed version was it was an emptying. It was like, I don't need any of it. I don't want any of it. It's not going to happen. I mean, the demonic and evil side of that was the lie that it wasn't going to happen. But the part that I think God was getting out of it was we let go. We just let go. When you wake up every morning and you don't want to be on the planet, a friend of mine said you could be suicidal without loading the gun, because you wake up with hopelessness. And that's what I did for a couple months. I woke up and by the time I finished my coffee, the sadness kicked in. And it was because I was trapped. You know, what the enemy did was he trapped me in a place that fear had taken root, and then he multiplied my offenses, and accusations with God. And, we raged at God in those places. And I did. I remember, telling the Lord, and I said, "You took me too far. You went too far this time." Because what I didn't expect was number one, I didn't expect things to get harder after we crossed the threshold. I didn't think it was going to be worse when we had already done so much worse in our life. I didn't think that there was gonna be a whole lot more. It doesn't mean that I thought we were gonna live without there ever being a war. What I didn't think was that we would cross the threshold and get hammered, 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 and it disillusioned me. I didn't think that that was what I didn't think. So, the enemy took everything that I had about expectation and my destiny, and because my he saw that my expectation and my passion were so large and my anticipation were so large. I remember, we tried to buy this one house, and, we had 2 in a row that, last minute cash offer, praise the Lord. Well, the last one, I fell in love with it, and I was like I cried that night. Jane was still in Brunswick, I was here, I had the new job, and I remember getting up, going to work the next morning, and I was driving, and I was like I felt full of possibility, and I felt hopeful, and I felt like the possibilities were endless, and that's not normal for me to transition that quickly from devastation over something that I thought was beautiful and etcetera. And then the Lord said, if you got a house in the wrong location and it's the best house, what good is it?" Because what he had told us when he came up here before we ever came was that the job was about getting into the region. It was about location. It was that he was doing something that involved location and change of location for us, and that we had prayed into for 5 years. And so when he did it, it happened very fast. It happened very fast. And so because it happened very fast, and I had been prophesying into these suddenlies for 5 years, I thought, bam, 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 we're on it, we're on it, we're on it. It's all uphill from here. And then everything I tried to do was failing. Nothing was working. I was getting in accidents and going to the ER. It was like, what's going on, Lord? And the enemy comes in at the biggest transitions and the biggest thresholds, and he levies the biggest war. And his goal is to take you out and destroy your hope. But if you don't give up and you keep standing, you win. Period. 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 And I would love to say that my making a decision and standing and winning was gloriously beautiful and faith-filled. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. My friend and I were saying, for years, because I was used to this, I would get up at my old church in Brunswick, and I would, during communion, and I would have something, I would say something that was just prophetically just very hopeful. And people would say, "Oh my gosh, every time you get up, you just release so much hope." And I thought, that's strange because I'm contending from disappointment. But the speaking and opening my mouth was my process. It's what I did. And when I don't use my voice, I sink. That's how I'm wired. And so I would always say when I was doing my lives every day for, Bible talks, if you don't see me for a while, it's either I'm super, 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 super busy or something really ain't right. I mean, because my voice is the thing for me. I can't fix my car or my toilet, but my voice, I can speak, I can write. My voice is the thing I do. And so whatever form it is. And so at any rate, um, we were talking about how there were things that we just didn't anticipate, and we just didn't think that it was going to play this way. And we were the guys that I was the comeback kid. Part of my way I process, just honest, is I would go from places of being very encouraged normally and functioning and moving and kind of engaging with heaven in my environment And then things would happen, and I would slow down and process, and I'd take a dip, a melancholy kind of a place, depression, but it was honestly, it was just part of my process. It was like I went insular, I would get into that place, and then the Lord was doing something in it, and every time He was doing something in it. And then when I would come out of that place, I would come out guns blazing, boom. And what we were talking about, my friend and I, was like, this is the first time there were no guns blazing. Even emerging wasn't gun blazing. It was, I think I'm out. I think I'm not in there, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me. The thing that brought me out, I'm coming back full circle from where I started, was doing the thing that God was on, the book, this book. The Absent Man, Recovering the Lost Face of the Father. I just finished the audiobook not long ago. It should be up on Audible soon. But basically, I did this book and had it uploaded to Kindle in 1 month. I've never done that. I haven't written that many books either. I have to talk to Michael and see how that works for him. But, it was literally 1 month. The last day of me doing it was my wife's birthday, and the night of her birthday by midnight, I had just hit the button to submit to Kindle, the Kindle version of it. Then I did the paperback, and then I recorded the audio myself, and it's gonna be up on Audible. I hear people like to listen to books, and so I'd never done that before. So what's the point? The point is grace and favor is on the thing he's on. This did not make sense to me as a person who wants to do TV series and film series and documentary filmmaking and has a documentary that I haven't been able to produce yet, but there is movement on that, by the way. But, this doesn't make sense. This little interruption did not make sense to me. But it was I had this book, not the name, but the word father flashing in front of me for 2 months. And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that right now. I mean, it's a nice idea, Lord, thanks. Next book, when I get a chance, I'll do that." And you see, he was doing something in the new landscape and doing something that was different and unfamiliar and something I didn't know. It's not that I didn't know how to write, but it wasn't fitting. It wasn't jiving with the plan I was on. I had just gotten a prophetic word from the church that we went to that all those glorious things happened to us. Or the pastor was saying, "Scott, the dream's gonna play the way you think it's gonna play. Everything you're dreaming of, it's gonna play." And I knew what he was talking about. And he said, "But the path to it might be different than what you think." The way I would frame that now is I would frame it that we're living in this new era. We have this circuit board that's been replaced the old one, and the way that he's doing isn't the way that he's done. And so if you come to this thing with the thing that you know and that which is familiar, it's going to be extremely frustrating, right? And the enemy is going to have a heyday with the war over that juncture for you because he wants to disrupt this entire crossover and he doesn't want you functioning in the new because somehow he knows that that new circuit board is really dangerous. Just saying. And so I did the thing that he was on, and I did it in 1 month. Today, I finished the draft to this one, and I wasn't planning on this one. I'm actually working on a book called The Image Bearer with a friend of mine here that's about the healing needs for men. And I feel like there's a men's movement that needs to happen, and there's something that I'm on, that God's on, that has to do with the healing of men. The absent man was looking at fatherlessness and that wound in people in our culture. And so the this devotional, 30 days, 30-day journey to sonship, an encounter-based devotion for men, is the companion book to this. And I can with confidence say in the next couple of days it'll be out. It'll be available for purchase on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback, and I'll read it, and it'll become a audible book as well. I'm currently reading this book as an audible book. Chain Breakers, I'm doing that one right now as an audible book. I've been reading for that one. And so, um, what am I doing here? I'm doing what he's on. And right now, he's on my voice in podcasting, and he's on my pen in writing, and I need to do it. And I did one of these, like I said, in a month. And part of that was using some AI tools. AI did not write my book. AI helped me speak my chapters and put them into text that I could then airdrop to my Mac, and then use AI to clean up and be my editor while preserving my verbiage, my words, every in other words, it preserves everything you want it to preserve, but it goes beyond Grammarly, and my wife would be the one that was my editor. And so I always talk about it like, if you talk about when I'm speaking, if I go to topic A, topic B, topic C, and then I go back to topic A, well, my editor would take this A part and put it back up here. That's what AI was doing for me, was it was organizing. And so I would go for a drive and I would record a chapter. And I would go for another drive and record a chapter. And that's how I did a book in a month. So anyway, I could talk more about that other time because people are interested in the tools. Just kind of text me, email me, message me, or whatever, and I could tell you some of the things that I've discovered on the AI front that have been helpful. But AI, like I said, I want to qualify, isn't writing it. What it's doing is organizing for me, and it's helping me. It's doing my grammar checks. The audio books are actually the real grammar check, because when I read it for audio, then I get to find mistakes. Um, but at any rate, so this one will be out here shortly, which is the um, it's a devotional, and it pulls from this book. The stories are the stories that are here. It's not the whole book, but it'll pull a story into a day, and then it just goes through a series of things. I wanted it to be encounter based. It involves the journaling, and involves activations and things like that. So I wanted it to be something that we could, for men, that we could be fathered, because there's two things, and I wrote about this. Um, this is where I give you credit, Michael. I know you were on here. You might not be on here now, but I gave you credit back here in a big way. Okay, so this appendix to the absent man, and this one is for everybody, men and women. It's fatherlessness is across the board. Experiencing the Father through encounter and journaling. And essentially, that's where I talk about the sanctified imagination and encountering, engaging with heaven, and how those two things and journaling were the way that um, that began to change everything in my life, in terms of being fathered by God, in terms of just hearing his voice. And when you come out of your bentness into the creature and you look to the creator and to tell you who you are, well, one of the ways you do that is I do it by journaling, by listening to him. I talk about listening. And the other one is through engaging heaven. It's those encounters. That encounter in the library was transformational for me. When I went back to the library, my book was on the bottom shelf, and I'm like, Lord, why is it on the bottom? He said, because you're set for transition. The ones that are bottom are going first. That was transformational for me. So it's those things that are transformational. Those are part of the new era. And there's a quote I want to go back to. Let me finish this one, but I'm going to end with this. Warfare doesn't come out of thin air. This is Fiorello. It seeks expression where your identity and destiny are not in sync. But when these two flow in harmony, they nullify the toxic atmosphere around you, and its energy can find no place in you. That's good. And I want to repeat this one. Ah, I think it's the one I'm waiting. Okay, here we go. Stillness, I'll end with this, is not stagnation. A lot of us are experiencing what feels like stagnation after we've already crossed threshold. We know that we're gaining some momentum. We know that we're in a place of promise. We know that we're breaking into that season where the next 10 years of our life are more productive than than any other season of our life. We know that, right? We know that we're in it. But here's what she says: stillness is not stagnation. You're not stuck. You're sinking. Syncing. God is not late. You are being aligned with a movement that doesn't leak time. That's so freaking profound, but it's true. And that's the one I want to end with. Yes, we can. I won't stay on here, but I'll catch up with you offline. Yes, we do. Um, but just know that you're being aligned and you're sinking. That in this pause, Father is really, really doing some stuff. And when I talk about crossing over from one landscape into another, one era into another, where you've got this new circuit board that's replacing an old circuit board, and there's other ways of doing and being and experiencing and engaging with heaven on it, and things we don't even know yet in many ways. The 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 discombobulation in the middle part makes it feel like I'm stuck or I'm stagnant, but you're not. There's a lot of syncing going on right now and a lot of alignment going on. And so get ready, because you're going to have a little blast off effect as you step into some of the things that are going to be like Amos 9 in the message, things happening so fast your head will spin. All right, blessings.